Welcome to episode 76 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. The Cloudminders.
In this week's episode, Kirk tries to solve institutionalized division on a planetary scale in order to retrieve a highly valuable and sought-after mineral. With trust at a premium, he must convince one or both sides to see things differently. But can his earnest approach pay dividends, or will physical proof be required?
I hear that, intellectually, Vulcans are as highly evolved as Stratos city dwellers.
We do pride ourselves on our logic.
Good afternoon, Ian. I hear that on an intellectual level you're as evolved as
Careful.
Okay.
How are you, Gerry?
I'm alright.
That's good.
You?
Yeah,
Unremarkable.
absolutely.
Best way.
Nothing has happened for quite some time.
Nothing of note. Nothing worth discussing.
Indeed.
Apart from this episode.
Well, this doesn't really feel new either.
I didn't mind it.
Oh. For me, it seemed like it was going over old ground.
The undercarriage has been dropped. The season is coming to an end. The show is coming to an end. And I think you can feel it. It's not dreadful. These type of episodes, had they been dropped in season 1, season 2, it'd have been an okay average episode. It just seems now they're getting very average all the time.
Yeah, there's nothing special about it.
No.
And what was going on with Kirk's hair?
I suspect this is a time in between going full on hairpiece wig and his own hair, and he's maybe still trying to make the most of what he's got. Maybe he's having someone blow up a little bit, tease it a little bit, but yeah,
It certainly had a bit more volume than in other recent episodes.
Yeah. Has he ever admitted to when he actually went? No. I mean, he's happy to accept it.
No, I don't think he ever has admitted to wearing any kind of hairpiece.
No, well, he has talked about people joking about his hair.
Yes, but I don't think he's ever said, yeah, I was wearing a hairpiece, or acknowledged that might be true. I think he always takes it as a joke and plays it as a joke.
Yeah, but he's never denied it.
Well, what can you do?
No, you could just say, yeah, it's a wig. I mean, it's quite obvious. In T.J. Hooker, for example, it was a full-on helmet.
You might just have grown his hair that way,
Could have, yeah.
like Elton John used to do.
Oh, it's better than Elton John's.
His hair went from rapidly disappearing to very thick very quickly.
Yeah. A number of footballers these days have went through that transformation.
But they've got to go out and play with it.
Yeah.
After they've had the operation, you can see all the dotted lines on their heads and stuff. And the little scabs that come up.
If it makes you happy.
Well, why not? If you can afford a hair transplant and it's going to improve your sense of self-worth,
Indeed.
why not go for it? Fortunately,
Indeed.
you and I don't have to worry about that sort of thing.
Not at the moment, fortunately.
Should we get into this episode and stop talking about hair?
Yeah. I don't really like talking about hair.
I feel it's my fault. I started this.
Did you? Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Let's get going.
Okay, let's crack on.
A wee log to get us going.
5818.4.
It's a little bit of backstory.
With a dramatic score.
Oh yes. There's a botanical plague devastating a planet in the quadrant where the Enterprise happens to be operating, which explains why the Enterprise has got this job.
Yeah.
It threatens to destroy all the vegetation on the planet, which would make it uninhabitable because the vegetation is what produces the breathable air.
Up on the bridge. They are at top warp speed, apparently. Heading to Ardana.
Ardana, yes.
Yeah. The home of the only known source of Zenite, a substance that can prevent this plague or stop it.
Indeed. Kirk wraps up his log and Uhura tells him that the High Advisor of Ardana will meet him on Stratos, which confuses him slightly.
Yeah, that's their cloud city.
It is, and he's concerned because he was expecting to collect the Zenite from the mines directly.
Yeah, it's an emergency. They don't, the formalities are all very nice, but they want to get this done ASAP, so let's get down there to the source of it. We'll pick it up and we'll come back and we can have a chat at some other point.
Indeed. So he contacts Scotty down in the transporter room, who confirms he's programmed the coordinates down to the main entrance as previously ordered.
And so Kirk tells Uhura to let the High Advisor know that they wish to do without the welcoming ceremony and get straight to business in the mines.
and then he and Spock head off.
So, down on this planet, they arrive and look up at the floating city in the sky, which they are both impressed by, and Spock would like to study its art, which Kirk describes as the population's chief occupation.
It's now, I think, the third time in the first 4 minutes of the episode they've mentioned the fact that there's a cloud city.
Yeah, and I think we also go on to a bit of a data dump here.
Yeah, exposition heavy opening. Kirk notes the reputation the city has for tranquility, and Spock asks whether Kirk has visited before.
What does he say?
Yes, but only briefly, and doesn't know anything about it.
Fair enough. Kirk then spots the mine entrance.
Yes, but not the Xenite.
No, but we get a nice crane shot as we follow them over towards this entrance. And as you say, Kirk wonders why the Xenite is not there waiting for them.
Spock speculates about another entrance, but concludes that perhaps the Troglodytes, which is the group of folk who are going to deliver the Xenite, have changed their minds about delivering it.
And just then, they are lassoed.
Yeah, not in a way that seems to impede them at all, but
Not much, no. And they find themselves captured by three long-haired people. I think it's three guys and a woman.
yeah, they're wearing boiler suits and hard hats and sunglasses.
Yeah, futuristic. It's almost like Back to the Future 2 style glasses.
Yes. And after a brief interlude for the credits, Kirk demands to know what's going on.
Now, did I notice there was some sort of terrible ADR here? Something said in Kirk's...
Yes, it's dubbed in later.
Is it? Yeah, his lips don't move.
Yeah.
He demands to know what's going on and is told sharply by the woman who I think is the leader,
Yes, we later learn her name's Vanna.
that they have been interfering.
Yes, and that breeds attack. But Kirk explains that they have permission from the government to be there.
They, however, are not interested, and so Kirk and Spock attack them and seem to be holding their own when a man with two guards beam down and demand that the Troglodytes halt. I'm going to call them the Trogs from now on, which is a well-known abbreviation.
For what?
Troglodytes.
Or Troglodytes.
Yeah, we heard the band, the Trogs.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll just call them the Trogs. That's what I've written.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Troglodytes try to run off.
No, the Trogs.
They try to run off when these folks show up, but are fired upon.
Yeah, I think one of the men is failed. And then this new leader chap, he introduces himself as Plasus,
Yes.
the High Advisor of the Planet Council, and apologises for the hostile welcome.
Yes, he says that violence is habitual with these people and assures Kirk that the insult will not go unpunished.
But Kirk is more worried about the lack of Xenite, which Plasus tells him has been taken by the Disruptors, a small group of Trogs who dominate the others.
Agitators.
Yeah.
He believes that they only agreed to supply the Xenite in the first place as a ruse to bring them valuable hostages to force the council to meet their demands.
They then accept an offer of going to Stratos whilst the hopefully brief search for this chemical, is it a substance, whatever it
It's
is?
a rock. or
A
something,
rock, yeah, gets underway.
Yes. So we head up to Stratos in the clouds, and places Kirk and Spock beam onto a balcony.
Now, was this an inspiration for, I think Star Wars has got a cloud city, hasn't it?
It does.
Yeah. I must admit again, I'm assuming remastered, but the views and the artwork.
We'll talk about some of that later on in the
we?
trivia. Yeah.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Spock is particularly impressed with the anti-gravity elevation.
Yeah, before they move inside and they are introduced to a young blonde named paracetamol. No, sorry, droxine or some sort of drug.
Yeah, Placis says it's his daughter and he calls her one of the planet's most incomparable works of art before introducing Kirk and Spock to her.
Yeah, Kirk smiles, as you can imagine.
But Spock doesn't behave like Spock.
No, he turns into a little bit of a flirt this time when she notes it's her first time meeting at a Vulcan, and he responds saying that it is his first time meeting at a work of art. Oh, he's a smooth character, isn't he?
Indeed, operating on that level now.
And I've got an issue with this relationship. Again, it comes down to the inconsistency that's... But we can chat as that progresses. Anyhow, they are shown the council's gallery, but Plasus is outraged when he discovers an act of vandalism.
Disruptors again!
How dreadful. They're despoiling the whole city.
Despoil. For what purpose?
By keeping us in constant turmoil. They hope to force the Council to accede to their demands.
What are the demands?
Completely unreasonable, Captain, but nothing you need be concerned with.
I must concern myself with it if it should interfere with the delivery of Xenite to Merrick II.
Mr. Advisor, the plant life is the source of oxygen on that planet. Obviously, if all plant life is destroyed, the humanoid life will follow.
I assure you, gentlemen, you will get what you came for.
I hope so. Ardana is a member of the Federation, and it is your Council's responsibility that nothing interferes with its obligation to another member of the Federation.
Of course, and we accept the responsibility.
But why do they destroy art forms? That is a loss to everyone.
Art means nothing to the disruptors. This is the only form they understand. The disturbances accompanying your arrival have been most wearying. No doubt you would like to rest.
That would be most welcome, Mr. Advisor.
Chambers have been prepared for you. A sentinel will guide you to them.
Despoil is an odd word that Spock used there. I must admit to not having been aware of it before. I assume it's a word like flammable or inflammable. They sound as if they should be opposite, but they mean the same thing.
Well, not quite the same. I think it means to violently remove something valuable.
That's very specific. Did you look that up, or is that just...
No, I'm just know everything.
Okay, sure. In any case.
Yes, Kirk and Spock leave at this point.
And then Droxine, she laments that the initial impression the visitors must have of them based on the treatment they received, but agrees that at least they weren't seriously hurt.
I thought it was quite interesting that we had a fairly lengthy sequence here without any Enterprise characters involved, or really anyone that we've known for more than 30 seconds.
Budget cuts. They're paid by the minute now.
No, it's just normally they would have somebody else there, or it would be a short sequence, but there was quite an extended bit here where Placis talks to Droxine, and then a Troglodyte's brought in, and they interrogate him.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was an interesting change of approach.
Sure.
Anyhow, Droxine refers to Spock at this point as Kirk's very attractive officer.
Which
Placis seems to note, but forgets because he doesn't react to that later on.
Yeah, he thinks she's talking about Kirk later. Yeah. Just then, security brings in a shackled Trog who was leaving the city without a transport card.
Yes, he is tortured by Placis, who removes his sunglasses to expose him to the light that is painful for him, as we later find out, and demands to know his business.
Yeah, he says it's to repair damaged tension paths.
He's not very convincing.
No, but he claims that he's forgotten his repair permit and lost this transport card when attacked by the guards.
Yeah, but the way that he speaks, it's not like he's not trying to convince them. He's just presenting this as, this is my excuse, and I know you won't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. A raging Placis asks if he's also lost his carving implement, because these things look like planes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that was.
Yeah.
And
he holds up this plane that was stuck in the art.
Yeah.
The chap insists that he only came to make repairs, and Placis agrees he will be making them by giving up the names of the disruptors.
Yes, and when he says he can't remember, he's told by Placis to start remembering, and responds with a little bit of sarcasm.
What does he say?
He says that, how is that possible when you city dwellers say it's impossible for troglodytes to remember anything?
I've got you there, yeah.
At this, Placis orders him secured, but he breaks free and jumps to his death.
Okay, I liked that, but I didn't understand it because only a few moments ago, Spock is talking about the anti-gravity. So surely this whole city is enveloped in an anti-gravity sphere. I
don't know. Apparently not.
So how can it be? What's holding up?
Maybe just the foundations are anti-grav.
No, I don't know. I'd have thought that everything...
certainly seems to be possible to fall off it.
It does. But what's holding it up? The anti-gravity?
Maybe that's just literally holding the structure up. It's maybe not anywhere, but it doesn't extend beyond the structure.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
Okay. In guest quarters, we see Kirk having a little nap.
Yep, Spock's meditating and we get a bizarre voiceover of his thoughts.
Oh, it's an inner monologue. Is this the first time this has happened?
No, I've had it from Kirk before.
No, I mean with Spock.
I think so.
Yeah. What does he contemplate?
He exposes himself as a fraud, essentially, by thinking in a completely different way from how he's ever spoken.
Okay, tell me.
He starts talking about the planet being troubled, containing violent contrasts with those who receive rewards totally separated from those who are the means of production.
Yeah, I mean, he's considering the disparity between the haves and the have-nots,
Yes.
which sets up.
It's short of his Marxist ideals.
Yeah.
He says the leadership is not wise, but then he talks about Droxine being charming, and then he starts twisting things to convince himself that Droxine's not involved in the...
Yeah, well, I think he wonders how she can remain pure of mind whilst being aware of the hardships of the people on the surface. How does he try and justify it?
He says she must not be aware. He convinces himself, despite the fact that it's very obvious she will be aware.
Yeah.
So essentially it's a contortion in his own mind to allow himself to be drawn to Droxine without having to contemplate the fact that she supports this system that's so unfair.
I like the sentiment, and I like the dilemma that Spock has here, but as mentioned, this is again another instance where it's not consistent with how he thinks and his character.
Yeah. If he's always thinking like this, then he's not exposed it previously.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, yes, he's twisting himself in knots, trying to exonerate Droxine from any blame for the system that's in place and her benefit, or the benefits that she reaps from it.
Yeah, he notes that these people have hatred bred into them, and that the young girl who attacked them when they arrived was filled with desperate violence, and he wonders how the lovely Droxine would react if she knew of this girl's misery.
Well, we'll find out. He then hears a very gentle sound and goes through to the next room where Droxine is there.
Yeah, she's preparing some food, and he admits that his Vulcan ears picked up her movements. Oh, because she's very into his ears. She's got an ear fetish.
Yeah, and then we get the clip from the start of the show where he talks about being proud of his logic.
They then compliment each other, and we see another woman at this point hiding behind a pillar. That's Vanna.
Yes,
from
she
earlier
approaches where Kirk is sleeping, armed with her little mining tool.
And it gets all a bit little icky as...
Oh, tell me about it.
Droxine and Spock are about to go for it.
Yeah, but also Vanna and Kirk. So Kirk wakes just as she...
Yeah, she creeps into the other room where Kirk is.
Yeah, so she's got this mining tool. You think maybe she's going to kill him or whatever. And just as she goes to strike the deadly blow, Kirk wakes, overpowers her, and then... I don't know what he's doing next, but he pins her down and looks like he's enjoying himself.
Well, I said he refuses to release her, and it gets a bit rapey.
It's very uncomfortable.
Before telling her that he will let her up if she answers some of his questions, she struggles a bit, then gives in and says, okay.
But as soon as he lets go, she goes for the weapon again, and they have to fight once more.
Now, I think this is a nice foreshadowing of her... how trustworthy she is.
Sure.
See, fool me once and all that, fool me twice.
Fool me twice, you can't fool me a second time. Meanwhile, in the next room, Spock, who heard Droxine padding about, doesn't hear this fight.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're already at the stage of talking about mating.
Are they? Yes, they're talking about the Pon farr ritual, and we get some bizarre statements from Spock.
Go on.
So, for a start, it seems really unlikely he'd even be discussing this.
Yeah, and also, he's seen lots of hot women before.
Yes.
This isn't the first.
No, and also when it was happening to him, he refused to talk to McCoy or Kirk, his best friends, but he's willing to talk to this stranger that he thinks is quite pretty. Anyway, he says the cycle can only be disturbed by extreme feminine beauty. Now, is he talking only for himself? Or is he saying that there's no gay Vulcans, there's no... like female Vulcans can't be...
I don't know, but it's inconsistent, because if he's got this mating cycle, that's what he sticks to. All of a sudden, a little hot girl is into it, and he's like, yeah, well, you know what, never mind that.
We can set this to one side.
She's almost at one point looks as if she's about to get on her knees in front of him. I think she actually sits down, but it looks like...
That's your dirty mind there.
maybe.
Seeing something that's not in the show.
Is there anything I could do to persuade you? It's like the start of a porno.
In your mind. Kirk, at this point, despite only being a few yards away, has to, I think, use his communicator to get hold of Spock.
Yeah, he's cock-blocked by this call coming through from Kirk, and they go through as the woman claims that she didn't want to kill Kirk, only to take him hostage.
Well, that's okay then.
How is she going to take him hostage?
I don't know, but Spock and Droxine come through, and Spock is so disturbed by Kirk's demeanour that he asks whether he's intruding.
Yeah, well, maybe that's because in his mind he's in that mode as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, Droxine recognises Vanna as a former servant of her father's and is clearly unhappy with her presence.
You think she's unhappy?
I think so,
I
yeah.
didn't take that.
Did you not?
No, I
Why
thought...
would you be happy about
No, I
her?
don't think she's happy. I don't think she's particularly unhappy.
Well, maybe unhappy that she was about to get down to it with Spock and...
Interrupted.
Yeah. Kirk tells her that he is uninjured, but mentions that the Trogs are under the impression that the Enterprise is only there to intimidate them, which causes Droxine to call for security before Vanna makes her own views known.
It is not impression, Captain. It is the truth.
We're here to get that Xenite consignment, and that's it.
Starships do not transport cargo.
In times of emergency, they do anything. And believe me, this botanical plague is an emergency.
Lies will not keep the Troglites in the caverns, and neither will your starship.
You talk like a disruptor, Val.
I speak for my people. They have as much right to the clouds as the Stratus dwellers.
The Stratos is for advisors and studiers. What would Troglites do here?
Live in the sunlight and warmth, as everyone should.
The caverns are warm, and your eyes are not accustomed to light. Just as your minds are not accustomed to logic.
Unaccustomed to light and warmth. That's necessary to all humanoids. Surely you don't deny it to the Troglites.
The Troglites are workers, Captain. Oh, surely you must be aware of that. They mine Xenite for shipment, till the soil. Those things cannot be done here.
In other words, they perform all the physical toil necessary to maintain Stratus.
That is their function in our society.
But they are not allowed to share its advantages.
How can they share what they do not understand?
They can be taught to understand, especially in a society that prides itself in enlightenment.
The complete separation of toil and leisure has given Ardana this perfectly balanced social system, Captain. Why should we change it?
The surface of the planet is almost unendurable. To restrict the segment of the population to such hardship is unthinkable in an evolved culture.
The surface is marred by violence, like the Troglites. Here in Stratos, we have completely eliminated violence.
What's your thoughts on the message? It's very on the nose. I don't have a major issue with it. It's obviously representing what it was like here, certainly 100 years ago and before. But even today, there's the different classes. Maybe not quite as overt, and there may be a veneer that everyone has equality, but it's clearly not the case.
Well, it's more troubling when you realise it was originally written as a analogy for civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where we're saying, well, this lot are 20% stupider than the other lot.
Yeah. But in this episode, spoilers, we understand that isn't the case. It's simply the conditions that have...
Yeah, but that's just the assumptions that everyone's been working on. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, that could also be, in real life, you could look at that and go in terms of education. You say, well...
Opportunity,
certain classes, certain demographics are 20% less educated. And it's not because...
They're not capable.
They're any less smart. It's because there's something that's holding them back. In this case, it's a gas, and in real life, it's opportunity, and it's
Tories.
It's the Tories or Republicans or whoever it is. It's society. It's the makeup. It's a system that's designed to oppress
and maintain the status quo.
Everyone who's not rich and white, generally, and male.
Yeah, and they convince people to vote for it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So, yeah. I think you'd have more of a problem with this episode, but I think its message is decent. It's good. It is addressing it, and I think again for the 60s, it was probably braver than what it would be just now. It's far more obvious.
I'm not sure that it deals with it properly.
But does it not say...
It does highlight, these guys up in the cloud and their little...
Listen, there's people that have got more advantages. There's other people there who do the work, the proletariat, who make the money. But there are conditions, there are constraints which prevent them from
sharing in
it.
Yes.
Yeah, and the ones at the top use this. Well, you'd never, what do you want with art and money? You would only squander it. And
yeah, no, I mean that's fair enough. It's just that there's no consequences for them.
Well, that's
in this episode.
Yeah, Sure. Yeah, I mean, basically let them off with it at the end and say, let's just forget about it all.
Oh yeah, we'll just maintain the status quo. You're as bad as each other. But at least I suppose, yes, it does raise the issue. You could tell actually in that clip that Spock's getting frustrated that Droxine isn't holding the views he expected her to, and that he's not able to persuade her.
Yeah, because he fancies her, and he doesn't want any moral barrier in that.
Yeah.
In his
He doesn't
mind.
want her to be a right-wing lunatic.
Yeah. Okay, we're now in this. I've called it the torture room here. It's not. I mean, it's got a torture device.
Council gallery of some kind.
Vanna is tied to the rostrum.
Yes, and Placis is trying to learn the names of the disruptors from her.
She is refusing. Instead, she claims that there are no disruptors, and so she is pelted with rays of colourful light.
Yeah, because she lives in a cave and therefore is sensitive to light.
But is that all it is? It's just normal light that she's not used to?
Maybe UV light, I don't know, but yeah.
Back to the guest quarters briefly. Spock is explaining to Kirk what a troglodyte means.
Cave dweller.
And they hear Vanna's scream, so run through.
Yes, and Kirk intervenes when they get there, and the rays are switched off as Vanna slumps down. And Kirk then gets into a discussion about torture. Although he agrees that physical discomfort is persuasive, which I think, surely even by the 60s, that was disproved.
Yeah.
That the information from torture is unreliable and therefore it should just never be done.
That is true, but in this case, it's not information that, it can easily be proven. If they say, where is the Zenite? She can either tell where it is or not. It's not a case of having to believe it. And is this accurate information?
Yeah, but the point is that torture doesn't get you to accurate information. It's not helpful.
No, but you can never rely on it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you can torture someone and they can tell you the truth, but you can't rely on it. But in this case, you could, because they're saying, tell me where the Zenite is, or I'll torture you.
Well,
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying, but this is not a case of, let's give information about, weapons of mass destruction, or tell me things that you want me to hear. This is a case of saying, we're going to torture you, tell me where it is, and within a few moments you can prove if it's right or wrong. If she says it's over there, and you go and it's not there, then you know if she's been telling the truth or not.
And yeah, Kirk is opposed to the use of torture, which at least is something.
It is, yes.
Spock tries to use this as a teaching moment for Droxine.
What does he do?
Well, she remains blissfully oblivious as he tries to explain to her what was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And Placis calls troglodytes an inferior species, which pretty much lays out their
his views and his
prejudices, you might say.
Yes.
He won't listen to Kirk and Spock's social critique at this stage, but Kirk explains that he will not stand for any more torture, and he notes that Starfleet would take a view on any violence that was turned on himself or on Spock. Although why they would think that might happen, I don't know.
Yeah, I think at this point, Placis asks why they're so concerned with Vanna.
Yeah.
I think we know.
Well, Kirk and Placis basically can't reach a consensus on whether they should be using torture to obtain Zenite due to the time constraints involved and the urgency, but given that he's in charge, Placis decides that Kirk and Spock should leave, sends them back to the Enterprise, and once they're gone, he tells his guards that if Kirk returns he should be killed. That's a bit of an overreaction.
Yeah, this is because...
Where's the benefit to him in killing Kirk?
There's none. I mean, if we accept that he is just... You see, unless he really truly does believe that there is a risk of being overthrown,
yeah,
then he's effectively fighting for his position, perhaps his life.
Sure. There's no reason for him to think that.
No.
All Kirk wants is the Zenite.
Yeah, that's true.
And killing Kirk's only going to make things worse for him. He's definitely going to get overthrown then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Placis is an arse.
Yeah.
Captain's log, 5819.0.
They've lost 8 hours and time is short. There's no trace of the Zenite, but there's been word from Merak 2 that the plague has accelerated. They need to get there within 12 hours or all life on the planet will be annihilated. Back
up in the bridge, Kirk tells Uhura to let Starfleet know that they don't have the delivery, and that if it does not arrive shortly, he will have to ignore Placis' order not to interfere and will have to team up with the Trogs through use of reason.
Unfortunately, McCoy is of the view that the Trogs are indeed mentally inferior.
Oh, yeah. But Kirk doesn't accept this, thankfully. Kirk's decent in this episode, isn't he, for once?
Yeah, he explains to McCoy, look, they're doing A, B and C, which are not things you could do if you were mentally inferior.
Yes, and they're also fighting for a cause.
Yes, and McCoy says, no, I'm sure they're 20% below average. But Spock tells him that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's his turn to argue with him when he says that they are the same species, those who live above and below. McCoy, however, expands upon his findings.
That's true, Spock. But obviously, the ancestors of those who live on Stratus removed themselves from the environment of the mines. Therefore, they avoided the effects of certain natural growths.
Natural growths? What kind?
Well, I had this xenite sample sent up from the surface. Now, unsealed, it would have had detrimental effects on everybody here.
Incredible. Xenite is shipped all over the galaxy, wherever there's danger of plant bacteria. No side effects have ever been reported.
There are none after it's refined, but in its raw state, it emits a odorless, invisible gas that retards the intellectual functioning of the mind and heightens the emotional. Therefore, it releases a violent reaction.
And the mines are full of that gas.
That's right, and the triglyphs are constantly exposed to it.
Bones. The disruptors, Vanna. It seems impossible. They've outwitted a highly organized scientific culture for months.
As part of the staff of Stratos, Vanna was removed from exposure for a long period. It is likely that without such exposure, the effect slowly wears off.
That's right, Spock. The other disruptors were probably removed from the exposure, too.
Does the brain return to normal?
According to findings, it should.
Can you neutralize the gas?
No, but a filter mask should remove the exposure.
Find one. Meet us in the transporter room.
Imagine having to walk about wearing masks all the time.
Oh, that would be good.
I'll never catch one. Passos and his crew up there, they won't want to wear it.
They'll be anti-vax, anti-mask.
Of course.
We're in the transporter room where Kirk, Spock and McCoy have installed a wall monitor that they can speak through.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought it might have been the briefing room, but nonetheless, they're using this screen to communicate with Passos to tell him about the mask. But what do you think?
It's very much like trying to explain to people here and now why they should wear masks.
Yeah,
he's not listening. He's not interested. It's invisible. It can't hurt us.
Yeah, he doesn't think it can bring about intellectual equality and refuses to accept the science behind it. Kirk, however, doesn't want to argue and says he's going to tell Vanna about the mask, but Passos is sceptical that even she will believe this apparent nonsense.
Kirk wants to trade masks for Zenite, but Passos says no, at least until his scientists verify McCoy's findings, which we know they won't.
Exactly, and will take days in any case. Kirk gets to the point and accuses Passos of fearing that they will work and the ramifications for them if they do.
To be honest, I'm increasingly unconvinced that Passos even won the last election.
Yeah, do you think there may be some sort of fix in place?
Some sort of the Sky Court decided it for him, maybe. He's been planting his judges there. Anyway, Passos is rebuffed by Kirk and reminded that there's an emergency mission to be carried out.
I think this enrages him as he reminds them of their mission and tells them it's not to conduct tests and promptly ends the communication.
At this point, Spock notes there are under 11 hours left, so just reminding us of the ticking clock. So Kirk decides to beam down to Vanna's room, despite Spock noting it would be legitimate for Passos to execute him if he gets caught.
Kirk responds by advising him and McCoy against trying to go in his place, and that's an order. McCoy's like, okay, yeah, I was definitely going to insist.
They weren't interested in doing this for him this time. Down in Vanna's room, there's I don't know if it's a cell or a room, but there's a bed and there's a table. And
it's a thing we sell. It's a holding cell. It's yeah.
So Kirk beams in, tries to explain to her about the masks and why they're needed, but she's quite dubious. She doesn't think the government's going to allow this anyway.
No, but she is open to discussing it and asks about Passos and points out anyway that the city council will not listen to the trogs.
No, but Kirk says that Passos isn't the entire council and he'll come back and advocate for them after he's been to Merak too.
Yeah, well, that's a bit... Yeah, I'll definitely come back.
Well, like Vanna says, she's heard enough promises.
Yeah.
They've been hearing promises for centuries, apparently.
All he can do is plead for her trust and tells her about the millions that will die if she doesn't.
So she says that she will trust him if he trusts her, asking him to accompany her down to the caves.
Bit suspicious that. You can just bring it out, surely.
Well, you would think.
He is obviously wary, but she asks for his trust on this, which he reciprocates.
Well, he's kind of pinned in a corner by her, isn't he?
Yeah.
So her meal is then brought along and he stuns the the security guard who's bringing it with his phaser, and they take his transport pass so they can leave the city, and some time passes.
We next find them going into the mines. She leads them to her headquarters, I think, where 2 other disruptors appear, and Kirk finds out that she was playing him all along.
Yeah, he's taken hostage, and she says she doesn't believe his stupid story about gases. But now she has him as a hostage, and she has his phaser, which are 2 things she did not have before.
Yeah, I think he's got his mask on at this point, so he should be okay.
She takes the mask away and makes him dig the rock.
Ah, that's not good.
And we get a supplemental Spock log.
5819.3.
Yes, he basically says there's nothing we can do, which is a bit of a shame. We've not heard from Kirk for a wee while.
Yeah, they're going to have to wait around until they get an order. That's not necessarily how he would...
Not normally.
No. Back in the mines, Vanna tells one of her trogs to show off the mask in order that Plasus knows that they have more to bargain with.
Yeah, they have to place it on the platform, which I think then alerts the folk on the city that there's something to be beamed up.
And the other guard is told to watch out for help that might be arriving for Kirk.
There's been a bit of an argument between a guy called Midro, who's one of the troglodytes, and Vanna. He wants to just kill Kirk.
Yeah, wise choice.
Yeah, but Vanna says that she's taking responsibility for him, and he says that he'll have more votes than she does when he comes back with the rest of the crew.
I thought at this point it's like a double bluff, that she was only pretending to have played Kirk in order that the other trogs will be happy enough with it. Once they leave, she would be...
No,
that's not.
Once he does leave, Kirk asks if what Vanna's fighting for is the right to just kill everybody, but she tells him that Midro is a child.
And tells him to keep digging.
Yeah, he asks for the mask, but she remains sceptical and says that they will keep him there until they can live in the sky.
But at this point, Kirk again overpowers her, grabs the phaser and barricades them both in by shooting down a blockage.
She's quite upset at this decision because it means they're going to run out of oxygen and die.
He mocks her sarcastically by noting that she didn't believe in the dangers of his unseen gases before.
Yeah, indeed. And then he contacts the Enterprise, who take a wee while to answer.
Well, that's it. I've got here a smart-ass behaviour is curtailed immediately. But eventually, Spock makes contact.
Yes, and confirms they can reach the chamber with their transporters.
Yeah, and he then gives them unusual orders.
Yes, he instructs Spock to beam Plasus. It's been auto-corrected on my... I don't know what process means. Plasus down to the cavern that they are in without warning him. Yeah. Spock understands.
But Vanna, she doesn't know what he's up to, and he tells her that he is preparing a demonstration on the effects of the unbelieved gas.
Up on the bridge, Scotty seems on the verge of arousal, having heard Kirk's orders.
Well, yeah, he's grinning like the proverbial here.
Spock asks him to handle the transporter personally, and he agrees, hoping for the opportunity to see the High Advisor's face.
Don't know why he's not been involved at all.
So yes, it's like, yeah, we're going to be dicks. Yeah!
Back in Stratos, Droxine she's gagging, wanting for Spock, but...
Pining is the word that I used.
Oh, right, okay, pining, yeah. Dripping.
Plasus thinks she's pining for Kirk, as we mentioned earlier, even though he's noted her saying she was interested in Spock.
Yeah, the scene ends with her smiling at this accusation. Back quickly to the bridge, Scotty communicates through saying that he is ready, but Spock tells him to wait as there are now 2 people close to each other.
Yes, Droxine obviously is still there, so they have to hold off.
He accepts that Kirk said immediately, but states that Kirk will have to wait until Plasus can be isolated, unless Scotty's got an alternative plan.
He says he'll think about it.
But he doesn't.
No. Back up on Stratos, Droxine explains to Plasus that she was thinking of Spock, not Kirk, and he doesn't care. Same as the, one as bad as the other.
Yeah, but we return to her. She's getting aroused as she explains it is Spock and his exquisitely shaped ears that she lusts for.
At this point, a security guard, I think they call them sentinels.
I just call them guards.
He enters and explains that Kirk has helped Vanna escape, which outrages Plasus, and he tells Droxine to stop defending them. Yeah,
I think she does try to defend them by saying that they're desperate, but is sure Spock would not behave like that, and asks him if they're so sure of their methods.
How does she know what Spock would or wouldn't go along with?
She doesn't, but
it's
just
much like what Spock was doing earlier on.
Exactly. She's just projecting. that she's determined that their views will be aligned so that they can bang.
Placis sends her away, which ultimately proves to be a mistake.
Back up in the bridge. And now that Placis is alone, Spock and Scotty are able to manoeuvre him to the transporter room and then onwards to the mine, where apparently Kirk will deploy his usual diplomatic bam. Is this sarcasm?
I've said, is that a dig? Scotty thought the High Advisor looked very angry as he passed through the transporter.
Of course,
room.
if you're just suddenly being beamed about the place.
Down in the mine, an outraged Placis rages at Kirk, who insists he will prove the effect of the gas and makes both Placis and Vanna dig.
That was nice.
Yes.
Satisfying.
He's getting a bit agitated, though. He answers Spock's communication saying, "You were told to stand by, do it."
Yeah.
Which Spock notes is uncharacteristic, and McCoy wonders, for the audience's benefit, whether the Xenite is affecting him. It's like, they won't notice. We have to say it out loud,
yeah.
Put it in the script.
He's not just acting like this because he's a dick. Back down the mines, Kirk watches as Vanna starts to struggle through lack of oxygen, and Placis agrees with her and demands that he get them out of there.
Kirk won't leave, and he and Placis get in an argument.
Yeah, he swats him away and orders him to dig again.
Vanna notes the gas must be affecting them, and as they scuffle, she grabs the loose communicator and contacts the Enterprise.
Yeah, because he's inexplicably thrown down the phaser. I think...
Well, because Placis challenged him to fight without
like a man.
Use these tools, even though you've never seen one
no,
before.
I'm not using the tool, no.
Is this not for painting? Can you imagine Bob Ross just mixing these colours in?
Yeah, so she communicates through to the Enterprise, asks for help, and so all three are beamed aboard, where Spock splits them up, but has to calm Kirk by explaining that the gas has affected him.
Placis then attacks Kirk from behind and gets knocked out by the captain.
Yeah, the old karate chop to the neck.
And Kirk then notes that his demonstration seems to have been successful.
Yeah, he has to sort of regain his composure.
Yes. But obviously he's able to shake it off.
And then we have, I suppose, a fairly unsatisfying ending. Back in Stratos, Droxine gets her wish to have a final meeting with her a big-eared object of lust before we return to Vanna, Kirk and Placis.
I don't like filters, or even masks. I like the word protector much better. Don't you?
It is less technical, therefore less accurate, but perhaps more generally descriptive of the function.
It appears you have what you came for after all.
The captain will have his Xenite, just as I agreed.
Agreed? There's no such word in the Troglite vocabulary.
The captain will have his Xenite.
No thanks to any agreement by you. It had to be obtained by force.
Because it is the only way we can obtain what is due us.
How about your education? Was that by force?
It served your purpose at the time.
You could have had those filters for all the good it will do you.
They will be very effective, sir. They've been severely tested, and the Troglites will no longer suffer from retardation and emotional difficulties.
They will all be like her. Ungrateful, vindictive.
Yes. Our demands have just begun. Here is the Xenite, Captain. Just as I promised.
Thank you, Von.
Stratos is so pleasant, so beautiful. I think I'm afraid to leave it.
There is great beauty in the knowledge that lies below. And only one way to really experience it.
I shall go to the mines. I no longer wish to be limited to the clouds. Is your planet like this one?
No. No, Vulcan is quite different.
Someday I should like to visit it.
Droxine saying that she'd like to now to visit the mines. Yeah, that'll last 10 minutes. She'll be down there thinking, this is manky, I want back up to the clouds.
Like a royal visit to the prison or something. It's like, oh yes, smells like wee, let's leave. Kirk at this point proposes some form of mediation, but Placis is still furious and intends to press charges against Kirk for kidnapping him.
Yeah, then they agree they'll both just ignore each other's...
Well, yeah, Kirk responds by saying that you attacked me, so there's charges against you too, and Vanna says, let's just call the whole thing off.
Yeah, so again, explain, how's the whole situation been resolved?
They're not going to prosecute one another.
No, I mean the bigger picture with the troglodytes.
They're going to wear masks and stop being so stupid, and then eventually they will form an army and take over the city.
Yeah, good. Be a regime change.
I would imagine so. Forced.
Mm-hmm.
Revolution. Revolution, I think is the word.
Yeah, I think you would have to. Starfleet would have to send regular visitors to make sure that.
Well, what would really happen is Starfleet will send peacekeeping troops that will keep the troglodytes in the mines.
Yeah.
And stop any form of social unrest happening.
Of course.
Kirk then notes to Spock they have less than 3 hours to get the Xenite, so get your mind back on the job. And Spock shows it is on the job by saying it's only 2 hours and 59 minutes. So Kirk calls the Enterprise. They ask to be beamed up, and as they leave, Droxine stares longingly in their general direction. And that's it. On to another adventure.
I thought it was a fine episode. Like, fine as in okay.
At best.
I thought the intentions were decent.
You weren't satisfied with the resolution?
Not really. It's a bit wishy-washy.
How do you think things will progress then?
Oh, it'll be Placis will be back to his old ways unless there are regular interventions. Unless he's kept, unless someone keeps an eye on him.
Do you think Kirk should have done anything differently?
No, I think his job was to save the lives of millions. He was there to get the Xenite. So I think perhaps he has to go back to Starfleet, explain the situation, say what has to happen. Tell him to keep an eye on the situation because Placis can't be trusted. He's a wrong'un. So, I think he was there for the Xenite.
Okay.
And he got it, so fine.
Fair enough. Trivia?
Sure.
Original air date 28th of February 1969. Directed by Judd Taylor. This was the last of his 5 episodes for the show. Hear more about him back on the podcast for the Paradise Syndrome.
Judd Taylor's like the son of Judd Trump and Dennis Taylor.
Yeah, or ancestor in this case. Margaret Arman wrote the teleplay for the episode. This was the last of her 3 episodes.
There's no harm in that.
Yeah, you can hear more about her on the podcast for the Gamesters of Triskelion. Charlene Polite, or Polite? I don't know. Polite. Played Vanna. This was her only Star Trek role. She also appeared on shows like Hawaii Five-0, The Doris Day Show, and Mod Squad, and died from breast cancer in 1999 when she was just 55.
That's sad. I thought you were going to tell me that she was the founder of the van hire company Vanarama.
No.
Okay.
Jeff Corey played Placis. This was his only Star Trek episode. He also appeared in films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, True Grit, and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, as well as series like Charmed, Roseanne, and The A-Team.
Good TV.
He, ironically, for the fact that he plays a right-wing leader here, was blacklisted for being a communist for 12 years during his career, having served in the US Navy during World War II before that. At one time, he was considered the most prestigious acting teacher in all of Hollywood, working with the likes of Kirk Douglas, Cher, Jack Nicholson, and Robin Williams.
The Meisner technique, I think.
He died in 2002 at the age of 88 from complications after a fall. Hopefully not from a cloud city.
Yeah, anti-gravity. Yeah.
It's not funny.
It's not funny, no.
Diana Ewing played Droxine. This was her only Star Trek role. She also appeared in series like Mission Impossible, Gunsmoke, and Petrocelli, and she's now 75 years old.
Was she in Dallas?
Don't think so.
Oh, the Ewings.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Ed Long played Meadro, the one that wanted to kill Kirk. This was his only Star Trek appearance.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm doing this week. Ed Long, is that not a Queen song?
Stop it. He also appeared in shows like Batman, Bonanza, and Gunsmoke, and died in 2015 at the age of 85. My favourite one, Fred Williamson, played Anka, one of the other Trogs.
Yeah, he was an Anka.
Formerly an NFL player with the Raiders and the Chiefs, he began his acting career in the late 60s, and this, his only Star Trek appearance, was one of his first roles. He went on to appear in movies like From Dusk Till Dawn, MASH, and Starsky and Hutch. He's now 83 years old and remains an active actor.
Good.
No Colombo connection.
Not good.
Trivia-wise, when we see, you mentioned during the podcast, when we see the river from the Cloud City balcony, it's the Hadramawat Plateau dry river basin in Yemen, which isn't that interesting.
I was going to say that.
But the image was taken by astronauts on the Gemini 4 orbital mission in 1965, which is much more fun, probably quite contemporary to the episode being put together. For the remaster, the mountains on the horizon are based on a photo taken by astronauts on the International Space Station. Kirk's bed on Stratos was the couch from the Empath. Remember that? It sat in the middle of the empty room.
No.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It was a dark room.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
I
that
had
one.
in it was a couch.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, I don't know.
The original writer, David Garrold, who wrote The Trouble with Tribbles, thought the final version of the story was neutered compared to his original civil rights analogy. The episode creates and resolves the issue using this gas rather than properly addressing the social imbalance in his view.
Fair enough. Fair point.
There's a 1927 science fiction classic by Fritz Lang called Metropolis, which shares a number of similarities with the setup of this episode. It's a tall building and the elites live at the top and the folk generating the wealth live at the bottom and so on. I think it ends with a revolution.
Good.
The entrance to the mine was previously the entrance to the computer chamber in That Which Survives. And in terms of international titles, in Spain this was Los Pensadores de la Nube, which means the thinkers of the cloud. In German it was Die Wolkenstadt, which translates simply as the Cloud City.
Rubbish.
Even in Japan it's not that good. They went for Wakse Adana no Junito Sakosen, which translates as Operation Zionite on the planet Ardana.
Bit descriptive.
It's really boring for...
Yeah.
Next week, 22nd episode of Season 3, The Savage Curtain, which is the one with Abraham Lincoln in space.
Pay no attention to the man behind the savage curtain.
In the meantime, find us on social media. We're at Trek Podcast on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram. You can go to YouTube for any of the episodes or all of the episodes indeed. And StarTrekPodcast.com is where we post the episodes every week with a little opportunity for you to add your thoughts and comments there as well.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye.